one of the earliest Canadian classical music stars, becomes a subject in a psychological drama that's about to take the screen at the Dave Barber Cinematheque. Measures for a Funeral debuted to great acclaim last year during the run of the Toronto International Film Festival. It traces the story of a graduate student in music, Audrey, who's researching the life and career of the violinist Kathleen Parlow, all while reckoning with the price of success when it comes to the music careers, not only of herself, but also her ailing mother. Measures for a Funeral begins its run at the Dave Barber Cinematheque this coming Friday. Ahead of that, director Sofia Bohdanowicz joins us to tell us more about the film. Nice to see you, Sofia.
Thank you, Nolan. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for taking the time. There's so much to break down with this film, but maybe to start, where did you first become acquainted with the story of Kathleen Parlow, and what made you decide to take that and run with it for not only one film, but two?
It's a great question, and I'm so glad to be doing this interview with you today because you're based in Winnipeg, which is actually where my grandfather was born.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Yeah, an amazing coincidence. And it's really interesting because my grandfather studied with Kathleen Parlow. So this is kind of where the genesis of the project began. And I grew up going to go see my grandfather play at Roy Thompson Hall in the Toronto Symphony. And I was always blown away by his level of skill, professionalism, how elegant he was. And he wasn't a soloist. He wasn't an incredible performer in that he wasn't like a soloist. He wasn't a star. He wasn't front and center, but he did play on the soundtrack of Moonstruck. He did play on the song These Eyes by the Guess Who, which closes off Matthew Rankin's film Universal Language, which is very cool. So I was always, in awe, but also deeply wondered who was this person that taught him to play this way, that gave him this incredible career that allowed him to raise a family of four. And that person was Kathleen Parlow. So I always knew about the legend of her as I was a little girl growing up, but I didn't really get close to it until 2016 when my uncle Steve introduced me to this article that was published in the Toronto Star that was all about the discovery of this concerto, Opus 28, that was found by an archivist named Human Bizadi, who had taken it upon himself to reorganize Kathleen Parlow's collection because all of her archival material was there, but no one was taking it upon themselves to organize it and be like, what is this? What date did this postcard, was this postcard written on? Where is this photo from? So he was taking it upon himself to organize her life, but also to give it a context, because this is what archivists do. And as he was doing it, he discovered this incredible manuscript, and it was published in the Toronto Star. And so I showed up to the Edward Johnson Music Library about 2 months later, very, very curious to see this concerto. And I think I was the first person from the public to sign up to go in and look at it. And it had been performed actually by the Malmo Symphony in Norway. So it hadn't been performed in Canada yet. But Human let me listen to the recording of this piece of music. And I was so blown away. I was so touched that I really needed to do something with it. I just became fixated on it.
So that concerto, this amazing piece by Johann Halvorsen, I understand, becomes such a central figure in this film. How do you then take this score, this experience that you have, and then translate it into this whole story that examines so many facets of what it's like to be contemplating a career in music?
That's a really great question. Well, when Dara Campbell and I were writing the script, we collaborated with a filmmaker named Atina Singari from Greece, who was running a residency called the Oxbelly Lab. And one thing that we were really anxious and curious to do was to make a film that mirrored, I guess, the musicality, the rhythm, but also the odyssey and the adventure that you hear in the concerto, because it's a very virtuosic piece. It's also bombastic. And there are three different voices in there that are kind of in tandem with each other, but also sometimes in conflict. There's a little bit of a battle that happens within Opus 28, but also there's a victory as well. It does resolve itself. And it's also a violent piece of music as well. You can only imagine how talented Kathleen was for Ewan Halvorson to see her play for the first time in Oslo in Broadreen Halls and to say, I'm going to finish this concerto that I've been toiling over for years, and I'm going to finish it for you because you are that incredible and that inspiring. So it was interesting because I guess in studying the concerto, I found three voices within the melody lines, and I kind of appropriated them to Audrey, her mother, and Kathleen, because those are like the three female voices that kind of move throughout the concerto, but also those are the three voices that move throughout the film. So the question always was, how could we make a film where at the end, when we're listening to the music, that we feel what Audrey has gone through, but also through music? So that's where I guess like a lot of the writing and the inspiration came from, was really, I guess, listening to the music, listening to what Ewan Halvorson had written for Kathleen and trying to make it happen and emote it through Audrey's character, through her journey, who she speaks to, but also in the way that she's trying to self-actualize as a human being.
Which is something that is so prevalent throughout the film, as she's at a real moment of having to figure out who she is, with a mother who is not only ill but has also voiced the idea that she resents her daughter for taking away her own performance career. Also, I understand, having gone through a bit of a breakup as well. Like, there's just so much that is happening almost at the outset of this film for someone to carry. Never mind the pressures that come with studying music and contemplating a musical career at such a high level. And within all of that, the concerto is not the only music that we hear. There's this immense amount of tension that also accompanies this kind of this journey that Audrey is going on. How do you choose what music accentuates this story and how it best fits in alongside of this violin concerto when it comes to making this movie and highlighting the drama that these characters are embodying?
Yeah, I know it's a great question because when we were writing the script, the idea was to take pieces of the concerto and have them played throughout the film, but I guess like in a very like broken way, and just to hear little segments of it so that when you hear it all at the end, it's kind of like an accumulation of the journey. And we tried that, and it wasn't working so much in the edit. And we had enlisted Olivier Aléry, who's an incredible French composer who's living here where I am right now in Montreal, to compose for the film. And when Pablo Alvarez Mesa and I, my co-editor, started working on the film, we listened to a piece of music called Ellipse for three violas. And it's incredible because this piece of music also had three voices, which also kind of like mirrors the three voice act that I heard in Opus 28. And I heard this piece of music, and Pablo and I started editing with it, and it kind of became like the baseline for the edit. And Olivier had just written this piece of music a couple of years ago, and it went with a choreographed piece with a Montreal choreographer. But it was incredible because in this piece of music at the beginning of the film, you hear this sound that kind of sounds like a trumpet at the beginning, or it sounds like it's like a trumpet like melting. But what Olivier actually did is he took the sound of the violas and he slowed them down to the point that they sound like trumpets. And what that did, I think, in the edit is that it gives this kind of auditory foreshadowing for what is going to eventually happen to the violin at the end. And I won't plot spoil, but it was a very fated thing finding this piece of music that Olivier had already written, and seeing the way that it actually worked perfectly within the film. And then there were some other things that he did as well, in that we found a recording that my grandfather had done with Kathleen Parlow. And we had the recording of him playing alongside her, but he put it through like certain kinds of filtering to kind of give, to keep the melody line, but also to give this sense of, I guess, like haunted artifacting, like in an auditory way. So there were a lot of experiments between Olivier, our sound editor Stefana Fertilla, as well as our mixer Lucas Prokasiuk, to bring Kathleen Parlow back, like I guess in a musical sense, but also we were experimenting, I guess, with her voice as well.
Very much with having her a character, a fully functioning character within this drama. How did it feel as you were creating this to be not only interacting with this person who had such a huge part in the life of your family, but also to be creating a dialogue for her based on what you know about her and how she shaped your family's life? How much did your own experience, your own knowledge of what Kathleen Parlow's legacy is, what she was like, how did that feed into how you created this character? And was that something that you ever had to have to like check and say, yeah, this is my family's experience, but maybe that's not the objective character, if I can put it that way? Is that ever something that you had to contemplate as you were making this?
That's a great question. I mean, for me, it felt very intense. The film is very dense. It's very
Mm-hmm.
nerdy. It's very detailed. And to make a film about an incredible historical figure like this is an insane responsibility. It's insane. It's insurmountable, and everything about her life and who she was doesn't completely fit into the film. And I think, it's only the tip of the iceberg. I think it's just the beginning. There are so many components and things about her and her life that we just couldn't fit into the film. It would have to be a mini series, but it was a tremendous honor. She was an incredible artist, musician, but also a really bold feminist, like a luminary. In the way that she speaks to this interviewer at the CBC, Percy Seltzman, and the way that she dishes it back to him in that scene where he asks her about regretting, not marrying or having kids, and saying actually that it's a relief that she has no regrets, that she loves her life, that she got to pursue the life and the career that she wanted to have, is actually a very remarkable and inspiring thing. There isn't much space, I think, throughout the course of history. I mean, we're getting a little bit better now,
Mm-hmm.
but for women to explore these kinds of alternative lives, but also to be supported and celebrated for it. So for her to be articulating and doing that on her own at that age, but also I think it was in the 1950s that interview was done, is a very remarkable thing. So for me, I was very fascinated by her, but also a little saddened that I couldn't like get it all in. But also you have to remember that a movie cannot be a book. A movie is a
Right.
movie. A movie is about essence and aura. And yes, detail is important for integrity, but you can't do it all.
There is so much detail already packed into this film. Canadian classical music fans will see this and recognize quite a lot of scenes if they're really steeped in Canadian music lore. If I think about scenes at what looks like the Four Seasons Center, maybe in downtown Toronto, I see the halls at the University of Toronto's School of Music. And there's even collaborations with none other than Yannick Nézet-Séguin, who helps to bring this
Yeah.
music to life. What do you hope that people who know music and the costs that takes, the
Mhm.
toll that takes on a life, take away from having seen Measures for a Funeral, as opposed to the
Mhm.
general cinema-loving public that will see it screened at Dave Barber Cinematheque this week?
Well, it's a very poignant question, and it's a very emotional answer for me because the film isn't for the market. It's for musicians. It's for people who really appreciate music. It's for musicologists. It's for archivists. That's why we have the majority of the opus that plays at the end of the film, because it was an incredible gift that Orchestre Métropolitain, Yannick Nézet-Séguin, as well as Maria Duenas gave us.
Yeah.
It's all about resurrecting Kathleen Parlow's voice, but also talking about the life of a musician. And I actually went to St. Petersburg and I spent a lot of time with an incredible violinist named Shingiz Osmanov, who was the lead violinist at the St. Petersburg Orchestra, who's based on the character Misha in the film, actually, who really, really let me get in tune with his pupils and I guess like what it takes to be that kind of musician, to have a career like Maria's. And the greatest success was that when Maria read the script, she really felt like it was her life, like those words were her own, which is why she agreed to play the part. And the other reason was because she really identified with the music. But I that musicians or people that really know and appreciate and love music feel seen and heard, because this film is for them. And it's for, excuse me, it's my about to check into my flight. This is the life of a filmmaker, always on the go. But to get back to that point, this film is for musicians, it's for musicologists, and it's for people who have made that sacrifice. So for me, the goal is really to make this film for them and to enable them to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel connected, and to know that I hope that they know that sacrifice is seen and it is worthwhile.
No doubt that people, regardless of their musical careers or lack thereof, will appreciate that struggle through this film. Measures for a Funeral runs from November 14th through 19th at Dave Barber Cinematheque in the Exchange District. We'll have more information at our website, classic107.com, and the Classic 107 app. Sofia Bohdanowicz, it's been so wonderful getting to know this film through you, and we're so excited to see it ourselves. Congratulations, and thank you for joining us here on Classic 107.
Thank you, Nolan. I'm so grateful. What a great chat.